Today is the final game of the preseason for the Silver and Black, but no starters will play. So who will I be paying attention to? That plus a whole lot more comes up on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for August 23rd, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we definitely appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of my man Ari. Without Ari, there is no Locked On Raider podcast on the YouTube channel, and so he does a fantastic job each and every day, takes a ton of pride in the show, and that definitely is not gone unnoticed. So thank you, Ari, for all your fine work. You can check out Ari on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. A lot of calls and texts about the final preseason game, which is today. So I'm going to try to squeeze in as many as possible. Might even cut one of these first two segments a little bit short to try to get a little bit more in segment number 3. We'll do our best. That's all I can guarantee. We'll do that coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, there are no starters playing today for the Silver and Black. There might not be second team guys playing for the Silver and Black, but who is playing and what will I be looking for? That comes up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, and really just a little bit of breakdown from my guy Justin Melo from the Draft Network about Gardner, Minshew, and Aidan O'Connell. We'll get into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. So off top, I want to go ahead and pass along a little sound from my guy Justin Melo from the Draft Network. Really good dude's been covering the draft, covering the NFL for a very long time. I have him on my radio show quite a bit. I've had him on the podcast before. Does a great job. And anytime he does something that's Raiders related, or he puts out a piece that's Raiders related on the draftnetwork.com, he'll reach out to me, send me a DM on Twitter and say, hey, just a heads up, I just put this out. If you want to talk about it or you want to read it and share it with your listeners. And I always enjoy that and always appreciate when someone who's a content creator or someone that's writing something and thinks it's something that's going to be interesting for Raider Nation to bring it to my attention. So he did that, and I had him on my radio show just a couple days ago, as a matter of fact, to talk about his latest piece. Did the Raiders make the correct quarterback decision? Again, Justin Melo by the Draft Network. You can check him out, on the draftnetwork.com, all of his work. So he was on my show just a couple days ago, and he believes that the Raiders made the right decision by going with Gardner Minshew. So one of the first questions I asked him was, why? Why does he feel that was the right decision for AP and the Raiders?
Well, I think the veteran experience helps. Let's not underrate what he did last year. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. I mean, he was kind of put in a bit of a tough situation as well, right? Signed up, you knew he was going to be the backup there in Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson. Well, he ends up, Anthony Richardson has a season-ending injury. I think it was in week 4 or 5, and now you're the starter for the rest of the year. He goes 7-6 in those 13 games as the starter for the Colts. Almost got them into the damn playoff. They fell by half a game, I think they missed it by, and they were above 500 on the season. So give him a lot of credit for what he did. I think he brings a bit more of a playmaker mentality to this offense than Aidan O'Connell does. We know he's a little likelier to take risks than Aidan O'Connell is. He's going to test tight throwing windows. He's going to throw a couple interceptions that have you go, I wish he didn't throw that ball. But
Right.
He's also going to have a couple completions where, if you can be honest, you're going to say, I wish he didn't throw that ball pre-snap, right? Like before he lets it loose, he'll test some windows that you can't believe he's willing to test. And sometimes it's going to work out, and other times it won't. But I do think he brings a bit more of a playmaker's mentality, a bit more wiggle. I think he's a little likelier to create off script than Aidan O'Connell is. I think that probably played a big role in this decision. And look, that pick 6 Aidan threw in the second preseason game, I'm not going to say that was the deciding factor, but it certainly didn't help, right? Like Aidan, he's here, as I said earlier, to be that high IQ quarterback that can read defenses and make the right reads and throws. Well, on that pick 6, he was late, both on the read and on the throw, and it was a poor decision. So I think when you pair some of that with Gardner's playmaking upside, it became a no-brainer.
So there was a reason right there from Justin Melo from the Draft Network on why he believed Gardner Minshew was the right guy for the job. And you hear what he's talking about him being a veteran, him being able to, create something with his legs, get out of trouble, move the pocket, something I've talked about quite a bit, something I think that you need to have these days. And I know everyone doesn't agree with that, and that's okay, right? I mean, everyone's allowed to have, different flavor Kool-Aids that they prefer. I prefer a guy that can do a little something with his legs. And there's no mistaking Gardner Minshew for Lamar Jackson. There's no mistaking Gardner Minshew for Jalen Hurts. There's no mistaking, Gardner Minshew for even Josh Allen. But he does have a little bit of wiggle to him. He does have a little bit of mobility. He can keep some plays alive. So here's Justin Melo on how important it is to have some type of mobility in today's game.
It's so important, right? I mean, all the best quarterbacks in the league have it right now, right? Everyone's looking for that type. I mean, from the Patrick Mahomes to the Josh Allens to the Jalen Hurts to the Lamar Jacksons. I mean, the only one that really doesn't have a ton of it, to be honest, is Joe Burrow. And Brock Purdy, right? Those are the two high-level guys, but they are so precise, right? They are so smart pre- and post-snap. Joe Burrow is like a freaking ninja, man. You watch the tape. He gets that ball out in 2 seconds flat, right? And it's always in the right place and it's accurate. So, yeah, there are a couple guys out there that are still playing elite football without it, but everyone's looking for that type. Everyone wants with that. I mean, Denver Broncos, they just named Bo Nix their starting quarterback. That's in your division. You're aware. He goes one pick before the Raiders at 13. What did he do in the preseason? It was some of that off-script stuff. He had one throw, he used a beyond the line of scrimmage. It didn't count, but everyone lost their minds, right? Because he had that ability to escape the pressure and make the throw. So everyone's looking for it. I mean, Anthony Richardson, all these young quarterbacks today, even Will Levis in Tennessee, all these young quarterbacks have some sort of escapability or some sort of athleticism to them, and that's what makes them high-end picks. It is so, so important in today's pass-happy league to be able to create something off script.
Again, just my preference, right? And I know that everyone doesn't feel that way. I know a lot of Raider Nation does want to have a guy that has some wiggle to him. I still think that the Raiders need a franchise quarterback, a full-fledged franchise quarterback. I do believe Aidan O'Connell has an opportunity to show what he can do when he's a young dude, so he can, still try to grow in this Luke Getsy offense. And if Gardner Minshew doesn't get the job done, then the Raiders could always, pass the torch on to Aidan and say, okay, you're up. Go ahead and show them what you got, just like they did last season. And obviously down the stretch, going 5-4 and helping Antonio Pierce get that job. So the final soundbite that I want you to hear from Justin Melo from the Draft Network is about Aidan O'Connell, because he does cover the draft like a glove. So I asked him straight up about, his evaluation of Aidan coming out of Purdue just a couple of drafts ago when the Raiders took him in the 4th round. And then there's a follow-up question as well. So here's Justin Melo on his initial evaluation of Aidan O'Connell.
Well, I thought he was a high-level backup quarterback, right? The type of one that you gamble on with a 4th or 5th round pick. He was a 4th, as you said. A guy that typically what's going to get him by is the football IQ, right? The ability to read defenses, the ability to make good, quick decisions. There are some shortcomings there, I think, when it comes to the athleticism. No one's going to say he's got the strongest arm in the National Football League. I think the velocity at times wanes on him. I thought it was more of a football IQ thing that was going to carry him through. And those are the types of guys that have, long NFL careers and are high-level backups. And that's, look, give him a lot of credit for the way he came in last season, right?
Yeah.
No one really wanted him to play, I think, as a 4th-round rookie on that team. So with Coach Pierce coming in, as the interim and making the change when they did, that's a really tough situation for any quarterback to step into, let alone a 4th-round rookie, right? That wasn't necessarily prepared to play right away. They catch fire down the stretch. The change, obviously, is a very successful one, particularly at head coach. Give him a lot of credit for how he battled and prepared last year. I thought he showed certainly that he belongs in this league.
Yeah, I did as well. And, I thought that with the offseason, the way that he trained and worked on his body, that he'd probably have a better showing in mini camp and training camp and even the preseason. Does he appear to be a guy to you that could sit for a while, continue to learn now the Luke Getsy offense, see what Gardner Minshew is doing as a veteran, a longtime veteran, maybe pick up enough tips where he could be a quality starter in the league one day?
I do think he's got a chance to get better, and I think learning the offense, I do think it could help him in the long run. I don't know that he's ever going to be a high-level elite starting quarterback. I think any quarterback, at least the ones with some baseline talent, which he undeniably has, any of them have a chance to have success in the right situation, right? So I think if the Raiders get to a point where this roster is better, they do a better job leaning on this run game, they've got a defense that can go out and dictate and dominate a little bit more than they have in recent years, I think there's a good chance that he could have success. You're looking at a perfect storm, though, right, more than anything. I don't think he's a guy that's going to necessarily elevate when the call to elevate is what's happening. So I've got some questions about his long-term potential. I don't think the Raiders are there yet, but I certainly think he's a guy who's going to be in this league for a very long time. Might be a Gardner Minshew someday. It's
right.
Like a sort of a low-level bridge-type starter. But certainly he can get better from this as he sits and learns.
And I think that initial evaluation of Aidan O'Connell is fair. I think a lot of people kind of expected him to be a high-level backup, right? And that doesn't mean that he can't be a starter. Just like, you heard my follow-up, is there a chance that he could sit and grow a little bit, learn, see what's going on from the veteran in front of him and Gardner Minshew and develop into that player? I don't think Aidan O'Connell's ever going to be elite. I did have one dude that was arguing with me on Twitter last week during the Cowboy game that Aidan O'Connell's elite. I don't think any of us think that, right? And he doesn't have to be elite. That's the thing about it. You don't need an elite quarterback to win in the National Football League. There's only like 2 or 3 of them that are actually elite. Everyone else is, either good to great or just average, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of elite quarterbacks. If there was a lot of elite quarterbacks, guess what? Everyone would have one. They don't for a reason. But, there's a chance that he could still develop. And with his work ethic and the way that he's got it between the ears, I wouldn't hold it against him. I wouldn't think that he couldn't do it. He's just got need a little bit more time to develop and understand the game. And, of course, it's a new system as well. So, again, there's no guarantee that Gardner's going to go start to finish as the starter. He could very well easily just play the first 4 games, and then all of a sudden AP say, yeah, you know what? We got to pass the sticks on. Right, Week 5 is against the Denver Broncos. Go ahead, Aidan O'Connell. You're going to get to start. So, again, it's Gardner's job right now. It's also up to Gardner to keep the job. But I thought those were some interesting sound bites from my guy, Justin Melo, from the Draft Network. Again, his piece is on thedraftnetwork.com right now. Did the Raiders make the correct quarterback decision by going with Gardner Minshew? Also, my last nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast news and notes of the day is about the Henderson Little League team, the Paseo Verde team. They played the elimination game on Thursday. They lost to South Florida 6-3. South Florida got up 4-0 on them in the first inning, and they never looked back, right? And so South Florida advances on. They're going to actually play Bernie, Texas in the championship game coming up on Saturday afternoon. But a hell of a run from Adam Johnson, the Raiders' assistant equipment manager. He was their manager, and they went on a hell of a run. So shout out to him. Came up a little bit short, but what a great experience for those young men going all the way to Williamsport and being able to play in the Little League World Series. So their season comes to an end, but man, it was a nice, great run, but they lost to South Florida 6-3. And I'll say this, I got to pull for South Florida, man. They've got so much swag. They've got so much, just kind of personality to them. They got some players that I really like. So if anything, hopefully South Florida goes ahead and wins the whole thing. And again, it doesn't make it any easier on Henderson for losing, but I do like that team quite a bit. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 2, who is this game against the San Francisco 49ers, preseason game number 3? Who is it most important for as far as I'm concerned? That'll come up in today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for segment number 2. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, which is BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables, right? When you're thinking about yourself and you're thinking about how to take better care of yourself, your self-maintenance, what are non-negotiables? Like if you go to the gym every day, you might say, yeah, I'm going to work on arms. I'm going to work on chest. Man, I don't want to do the legs today. I'm just not feeling it. So you skip them. That's obviously a negotiable. But for your life, what is your non-negotiable? When your schedule is packed with kids, activities, work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. And believe me, I know all about trying to jam everything into a 24-hour day. I'm the guy that looks for 25 hours, even 26 hours in a 24-hour day. So sometimes you'll see some priorities that you have slip a little bit, and you really don't have that time, or you don't feel like you have the time for you and for what makes you happy. You've got to decide what your non-negotiables are. Sometimes it could be therapy. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you can give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch that therapist anytime for no additional charge. So again, if you're thinking about therapy, if it's a non-negotiable for yourself, for your self-care, never skip therapy day. Do it with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Excited about today for multiple reasons. It is the preseason finale. It is the 49ers at Allegiant Stadium. It's Alumni Day. It's going to be so many former Raiders in the building. I'm excited about that. I'm also doing the pregame show and the postgame show starting at 5 p.m. Locally on Raider Nation Radio 920, also on Compass Media. So I'm excited about having that opportunity. The third and final one I'll do this preseason, and probably the third and final one I'll do for the year. But it's always fun to have that opportunity to be able to do that, another platform to be able to, showcase what I'm able to do. But outside of that, it is the third preseason game. And AP has said there's no starters going to be playing. There's even some, second team guys that aren't going to be playing. Like Aidan O'Connell's not playing either. You're literally going to see Carter Bradley and Nathan Peterman. And that's something I'm interested in because the Raiders don't need 4 quarterbacks. We know they have 2. We know they have Gardner Minshew and Aidan O'Connell. Both guys will probably get burned this year. Gardner Minshew's a starter. Wouldn't be shocked at all to see Aidan O'Connell at some point out there as a starter. But what do they do after that? Carter Bradley, Nathan Peterman. Do they put one on the practice squad? Do they carry 3? Do they not carry 3? Do they carry 2 and put one on the practice squad? Like, what do they do? Nathan Peterman, we always joke about Nathan Peterman because, that was John Gruden's scholarship guy, right? He kept him around forever. But the one thing I'll say about Nate Peterman at this stage of the game, he does know Luke Getsy's offense. So does that put a leg up for him? Does that give him an opportunity to stick around the team? Or is he just an arm for today's game? Right? I mean, because they need the 2 quarterbacks to get through today's game. So is that all he's going to be? It's a question. And I think it's a question that'll be answered when the game is played, seeing if he has some kind of understanding of this offense. Now, I'll tell you straight up, I think that he's more of a guy just to get him through the game tonight. But if he goes out there and all of a sudden looks the part and looks like he can, be that emergency quarterback if need be, I can see them moving on from Carter Bradley and maybe trying to put him on the practice squad and then keep him around that way. I can totally see that. But that's why I think this is interesting for the quarterback position. Nobody's going to be the starter coming out of this game. It's not like, hey, Carter Bradley earned that job or Nate Peterman earned the job. Not going to happen, right? It's Gardner Minshew's job. Aidan O'Connell's the backup. But what happens between these 2 guys, Carter Bradley and Nathan Peterman? So that's something low-key that I'm watching. It's not something that, is earth-shattering or anything, but that's something that I want to pay attention to. DJ Glaze, I just want to see him get more burn. He's a 3rd-round pick out of Maryland. He's been getting a lot of, attention throughout the course of training camp and these first 2 preseason games. Been playing a lot of the right tackle position. I think Thayer Munford definitely has that right tackle spot, but DJ Glaze is definitely, nipping at his heels. So, I'm sure DJ Glaze will probably get some burn this evening. I'd like to see him out there just to get him more, reps. That's really all. I'm not worried about him out there like he's going to get the job. Oh, man, he's going to come out of this game tonight and he's going to be the starting right tackle. I'm not saying that, but I just think that if he can get some more game time reps, that's only going to be better for him. That's just going to be, beneficial. That guy is definitely not a dude who's, going to be released. He's not a guy that they're going to try to put on the practice squad. He's not a guy that they're going to try to let clear waivers. He's making the team. He's definitely really good depth, right? And playing him at the right tackle spot and knowing that Thayer Munford could kick over to the left tackle spot if need be, right? I feel like that you would, if worst case scenario came out down to it, DJ Glaze would slide into that right tackle spot, and Thayer Munford would slide over to the left tackle spot if something were to happen with Colton Miller, something like that. So I just want to see him get some more burn, some more action against an opponent that's not Max Crosby. So, this game I think is important for him just for reps, not for trying to solidify a spot on the roster. How about the 6th-round pick, Dylan Lobby, the running back out of New Hampshire? I'm not going to lie to you. I knew that he's going to be a special teams ace, and I knew that's how he was going to butter his bread. I would have liked to seen him get a little bit more action in the preseason and have a little bit more success offensively in the preseason. He's a guy that I actually expected to do, play a nice little role. But the more and more I'm starting to see him, it just kind of seems like it's not really there just yet. Right. And so I'd like to see him throughout the course of a game really get some action to see what he can do. Again, he's a guy I fully suspect to make the roster based off his special teams ability alone. but he can catch the ball in the backfield, and I know that that's going to be an important part of this Raiders offense. So I would like to see what he can do with the ball in his hands in space. I would love to see that. And so hopefully he's able to get some real action tonight. He's not a guy that I'm thinking is not going to make the roster, but as far as kind of solidifying himself as a guy that has get some offensive reps, it might not come anytime soon. He might get some offensive reps in the second half of the season, the back half of the season, or if somebody goes down like an Amir Abdullah. But right now, he definitely looks like what he is, the fourth running back on the roster, right? It's funny. I've been looking at this running back room thinking that Lobby has an opportunity to maybe take the role of Amir Abdullah at some point. But right now, it doesn't look like that, just based off a couple preseason games and what I've seen in practice. He just hasn't looked fantastic. He looked pretty decent in Costa Mesa, but I haven't seen too much since then. So I want to definitely see what Dylan Lobby can do, the 6th-round pick out of New Hampshire. The two young corners, MJ Devonshire, the 7th-round pick out of Pitt, and DeCam Richardson, the 4th-round pick out of Mississippi State. Those guys just want to develop more depth at the cornerback position, right? Those are some guys that we've talked about quite a bit. I actually had some pretty high hopes for DeCam Richardson coming out of Costa Mesa because he made some good plays there. But, he hasn't really done too much yet. I mean, MJ Devonshire hasn't done anything. He's actually been having, some pretty bad preseason games. But DeCam's been playing better than him. But that's not really saying a whole lot at this stage of the game. So I'm hoping that both those corners, they get a lot of burn, get a lot of action tonight, and they can hold their own. They can hold their own, maybe make a few plays, then you'll know they're at least trending in the right direction. Again, those aren't guys that I expect to be, starting anytime soon or even asked to be starting anytime soon. But again, you're trying to build up the depth. You're trying to build up the talent in the cupboard there. So, if a guy does go down or get hobbled or, miss a few plays or a series or two, you feel pretty comfortable with the guys sliding in behind him, and especially with Brandon Faison on the roster and injured again. Seems like he's injured all the time, right? I mean, he missed the majority of last season. He missed some time in training camp this year. He's got to be a guy that's out there and can help compete. Be that guy behind JB. Be that guy that's behind Jack Jones if need be. Nate Hobbs, obviously, he can be banged up. He's already got a slight bad foot right now. So these guys behind the starters definitely need to step up in a major way. So MJ Devonshire, DeCam Richardson, would like to see Brandon Faison get healthy, but I don't want to hold my breath on that because it just seems like it hasn't happened anytime soon. Maybe Sam Webb, who made the 53-man roster last year, maybe he's able to step up and make a play or so. We'll see sooner rather than later. Was it last year Sam Webb made it or the year before? I think it was the year before that he made the roster, but we'll see. Christian Wilkerson, the wide receiver, there's 4 wide receivers that I know are on this roster. Devontae, obviously, Jacoby, obviously, Trey Tucker, obviously, and then you heard Antonio Pierce on Wednesday talk about, DJ Turner, he's cool. I'm sure he feels great, right? He's only made a 53-man roster one time in his career, and all of a sudden his head coach is saying, he's cool. Like, he ain't got to do nothing. He ain't even got to play on Friday because he's on the roster. Special teams, wide receiver, he can do it all. That's great for him, but can Christian Wilkerson, can he make that number 5 spot? Do the Raiders keep 6 wide receivers? Who would that be? Is Romel Keaton? Is he part of that mix? Who else could be a part of that? That's, something to pay attention to as well. But I think Christian Wilkerson, I like what he has as far as his hands. His size is really good. Can he step up and have a solid game? He had a couple drops earlier in the preseason. I'd like to see him have a solid game tonight. Finally, and I think this should be a no-brainer, I want to see Tyree Wilson. Probably the only former first-round pick, number 7 overall, that's going to be playing tonight, right? He's got to be playing. He's got to play tonight because he's the big unknown. Nobody knows what he's going to bring to the table. Nobody knows who he is at this stage of the game. Nobody knows what he is as far as what position he's going to play. Is he going to be out wide at the edge spot? Is he going to be inside the interior? Who knows? And I think we're going to learn a lot about what the staff thinks of Tyree Wilson based off how much he plays tonight. If he plays a quarter and then he's done the rest of the, he's got a baseball hat and no pads on the rest of the way, okay. Well, then he's the guy that they see a future in. If he plays a half, maybe they're trying to get him extra burn. If he plays into the third quarter, that's as alarming as it needs to be, right? I mean, it's just straight up. If he plays into the third quarter, that's going to tell you a whole lot about what they think about Tyree Wilson, right? And I don't think that he's a guy that's in danger of not making the roster. I know there's conversations about maybe the Raiders trade him. I don't see that right now either. I think they still like his upside, but he's got to show something sooner rather than later, or else he is going to be on the block, or else he is going to be in danger of not making the roster. And the one thing that Tom Telesco could say if he wants to, like he could release him And someone would say, I can't believe you just released a first-round pick. What a waste. He'd say, wasn't my pick. I didn't pick him. That was somebody. I was on someone else's watch. He just isn't a great player. He's not living up to the billing. I got to go with someone who does. I mean, that's how GMs get away with cutting someone that they shouldn't. And again, I don't think Tyree is in danger like that, but he needs to step up and show something sooner rather than later. So that's really what I'm paying attention to. The corners, the young guys, DeCam Richardson, MJ Devonshire, Dylan Lobby, the 6th-round running back out of New Hampshire, Carter Bradley, Nate Peterman. I want to see what those two quarterbacks are going to look like, how the Raiders are going to, carry quarterbacks on the roster. Is it 2? Is it 3? I doubt it's 4. I really would be shocked if it's 4, but who are they keeping out of Carter Bradley and Nate Peterman? Does Nate Peterman's knowledge of Luke Getsy's system, does that give him a leg up in the third quarterback position? We'll find out. DJ Glaze, just want to see him so he can get some more reps because I think that's important. And then Tyree Wilson, who are you? Step up and identify yourself, right? Come to the front of the congregation and let us know who Tyree Wilson is. That's going to be probably the most intriguing storyline in tonight's game. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they might be open to that perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and they might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, make the process even easier and quicker. And right now, if you post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL, you do it at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Start off with Cyrese from the Bay. He's calling to talk about the industry that I'm a part of and how it's changed and what he thinks of this show, the Locked On Raiders podcast, what it means to him. Here he is, Cyrese from the Bay.
What's up, Q? It's Tyrese from the Bay, man. And listen, man, I'm just calling you today to drop you a little bit of a personal line to give you some props for what you're doing. I've been hearing you talk quite a bit this week about, your background on radio, and you mentioned it a couple times in your career and how you think things are going and how you feel about it. And, I wanted to share a little something with you about that because part of the reason I started listening to you was you were one of the first podcasters that I heard that was able to bring the energy and the delivery that only a true radio pro knows how to do. I've been part of the industry like you for a long time, going back to my days at 340 Townsend, Clear Channel, iHeart, Westwood One, all that stuff, been through all the transitions. And, the companies are the companies. But to me, the best thing about working in that industry was always the people. It wasn't about all the privileged stuff, the concerts, the access to, shows and games and all that cool stuff. That was fun, but the people really were the best part of it. And that, stayed with me for a very, very long time. And, listening to somebody like you kind of reminds me of those days. And, so many times, radio as an industry has been called for dead, you know what I mean? And I remember going and helping launch the podcast sales team at Westwood One, going up and down the West Coast, trying to evangelize, why podcasts are the next thing. And one of the best things about podcasts to me is it's given a new life or a second lease on life for radio pros to do what they do, and you are living proof of that. And I love watching and hearing, your growth and hearing your story as you've evolved throughout that platform. And it's funny because a lot of it is truly a lost art. I remember when I was, taking clients up to the booth at Westwood One at the Coliseum and, watching these, tech clients from Google, for example, just watching amazement as they saw, guys like Kevin Harlan and Kevin Kugler do a live play-by-play, like watching the spotter do flash hand signals and watching them, call out the play live. And even to this day, I would much rather, if I'm watching a game, listen to a radio guy do the play-by-play because they just know how to to deliver that picture to the audience better than anybody else. And so, much love to you for what you're doing in that space and keeping this alive. And that's all I wanted to say, man. Just a little bit of a personal shout out. Keep doing what you're doing, and go Raiders. Cyrese, I'm out.
Cyrese, thanks so much for the call, man. Thanks for the compliment, man. That's the ultimate compliment, to be honest, man. I could ever get a compliment. If I could get one, that would be the one right there, because I did grow up in the era and exactly what you're talking about. You're spot on how it was and how authentic it was and how fun it was to be a part of. And I that's why I love radio as well. How you're mentioning, I'd rather, kind of watch a game or listen to a game on the radio or have a radio play-by-play guy, do the broadcast even on TV. Like Jason Horowitz does both. He does radio and TV, but to do it from a radio point of view, just like Greg Papa used to do for the Raiders, like you could close your eyes and see everything. That's when you know that you're really good. And, guys like Greg Papa, Kevin Harlan, love those guys. Jason Horowitz, man, he's really good at what he does. Love what he brings to the table. Brian Custer is one of my guys. He's a really good play-by-play guy. And there's a bunch of them that are out there that are really good, but those are just a handful that I think are upper echelon of them. And the Raiders are lucky to have one in Jason Horowitz. And you know what? They've had a history of having great broadcasters, and that's a part of the beauty of the Raiders. So thank you so much, like I said, for the compliment. I do appreciate it. And yeah, man, the podcast industry has been great. It's really blowing up, and it's giving so many different people options of what they choose to listen to, and more importantly, when they choose to listen to it. Cyrese, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Next up, we got a text from La Mirada Raider Guy. He says, La Mirada Raider Guy here, please please grade Tyree Wilson performance from the last game. Seemed like the last man moving at the snap is super slow. Will he snap out, or should we prep him to be a bust? Is he on the bubble to make the roster? Go Raiders. That's La Mirada Raider Guy. And you know what? There's a lot more conversation about Tyree that sounds like that text right there, as opposed to, man, did you see that number 7 overall pick? See what he did? It does feel like he's trending in the wrong direction, right? He's still slow off the snap. He's just thinking too much. Right, I talked about it before. I've been, texting with some folks that, are talking to people inside the Raiders building, and a lot of people inside that building think he's just thinking too much. And I've said it so many times. If you think, you're going to be reacting slowly, and that's what it seems like when he's, on the point of attack at the line of scrimmage. It seems like as soon as the ball snapped, he's thinking about what he does, and then he goes. By that time, the play's already passed him. It really is, and so hopefully, I don't even need to give him a grade. It wasn't very good against the Cowboys. We'll see what it is tonight. Practice, Vinny Bonsignore said the last week of practice, the night practices that I couldn't go to, said he probably had his best practices. What does that mean? I don't know. Some guys practice really well, and then they play in the game, and they're not very good. Some guys play in the games really good, and they don't practice worth a darn, right? So we'll see who Tyree is. We'll see if he steps up and plays well tonight. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Cheeto in the 805. He's calling with some thoughts on the quarterback and the first quarter of the season. Here he is, Cheeto in the 805.
How you doing? My name is Cheeto from the 805. I just had a little thought on the quarterback battle and Minshew as a starter. In that press conference, Coach AP, said the first quarter of the season, we feel this gives us the best option for a fast start to the first quarter of the season. Started thinking about that. Those first 4 games, they're going to come out to the quarterback. And I think maybe they evaluate what they have. Maybe they do like AOC, but they want to protect him. At least do those first 4 games. That's it. I'm out. Raider Nation, let's go.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much for the call. And yeah, I mean, the first quarter is huge, right? AP wants his team to get off to a fast start. The first 4 games are very challenging, 2 on the road and then 2 at home, right? With 3 out of the 4 teams being AFC teams, I mean, they have a chance to make some noise or be in a bad position. And not to mention, 3 out of the 4 teams that the Raiders will face in the first quarter of the season have really good defenses as well. So we're going to learn a lot about this team sooner rather than later. I think you're going to learn a lot about them after week 2. the first 2 weeks on the road. And then obviously they come home to host the Carolina Panthers and the Cleveland Browns. But I think you'll find out a lot about this team pretty quickly, right? And so things, if things don't go well for Gardner Minshew, I definitely believe that, Aidan O'Connell will be on speed dial. Hey, yeah, we're going to need to make a call to the bullpen to bring in Aidan O'Connell. I mean, look, it's one of those things. AP's got the job now. It's not about, trying to, get the team to back you up. He's got that. It's not about getting the fan base to back you up. He's got that. It's not about, trying to return the Raider way to this team. They've got that. Now it's all about just win, baby. That's all it's about. You got to win games. It's that simple. So they've got a big challenge in front of them. You know that, but that's why they play the games, and it starts on September 8th. Thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Just Win Will at the 816. He sends a text in and says, Q, got a question for you with cut day on the horizon. Who are your 2 roster surprises? By that, I mean, who's the player that you think will get cut but makes the 53? Wait, hold on. By that, I mean, who is a player that you will think will get cut but makes the 53? And the guy you think will make it and gets cut. Okay. I know you cut Amik like 3 seasons in a row. LOL. Just want to throw that out there. The answer for me, for my question, is Tyree Wilson for the guy we think is safe but gets cut. I don't have a response for the surprise player that will make the squad. Thanks, Q, for everything you do for the nation. Just Win Will out and Raiders. Okay, so you're looking for a player who I think is safe, but he's going to get cut. And you're looking for someone I think is going to get cut, but will be safe. That's tough. I did cut Amik like 3 years in a row, and I told him about it. And he just laughed because I wasn't the only one. Man, a guy that can get cut. That's a tough one. That's a tough one because I haven't really thought about it. I know Tyree Wilson is the easy one, but I don't think he's on that. I don't think he's on that trajectory just yet, right? I think he definitely, it still has a little something that he's got to prove, right? But I think that he's still got a little bit of wiggle room before we're at the point where we're talking about him getting cut. Surprise guys that couldn't get cut. Oh man, that's a tough one. I almost want to reserve the right to wait until after this Cowboys game. Man, dang. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I don't have one off top. You caught me off guard off that one. I don't have one off top just yet, but it's good food for thought. We'll have that conversation. How about we talk about that on Monday? I'll save that one and we'll start talking about it next week because all the preseason games will be in the book. So yeah, we'll do that. I'll save that one. I know that was the week way out. I apologize, but you caught me off guard, man. And Tyree Wilson's the only name that keeps popping in my head. And I just don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there just yet. But, as I mentioned before, if Tom Telesco were to go in that direction, all he has to say is, I didn't draft him. And it can be that simple. But thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. Like I said, we'll talk about that again next week. This final call comes from, I think it said T. Houston in Porterville. It's something with a T. I couldn't tell exactly what the name is, but it starts with a T, and his last name, I believe, is Houston, and he's in Porterville. I do know that because he was going to talk about Fresno, but he's in Porterville. He's calling about the Raiders' hype and how it's just that, hype. He's talking about tapes don't lie. Here he is, T. Houston, I believe, out of Porterville, Cali.
Yes, Q. This is Terry Houston from Porterville, California. I wanted to say Fresno, California, because it seems bigger, badder. And that's what my point is. All this hype about the Raiders being big and bad is all hype. The tape don't lie. We still can't stop the run. We still got defenders who have high pad levels. They get running backs get around them so easy, and I'm talking specifically Tyree Wilson. There's no difference between him and his rookie year, and I don't know if it's coaching or not, but that's what I assume ESPN is rating us by. We don't have good coaches, and that's hard to say because we get our hopes up high every year, and I think about our quarterback situation. Derek Carr is way better than either of the quarterbacks we got now. And it's kind of sad how we don't see the big picture. We need talent. We need more talent, top-notch talent. And that's all there is to it. It's going to be a long year. I enjoy your podcast. I hope you have a great day, and hopefully we'll figure something out. Have a great day.
Thanks so much for the call, my man. Sorry I didn't catch your first name. I do apologize. And I understand the frustration with this team, right? Especially seeing what you've seen through the first couple preseason games and their lack of being able to stop the run. And that's been something that I've, at least paid attention to. Is like, well, that 142 and 132 yards on the ground is not good. You've got to be able to stop the run, especially when you got the Chargers and you got the Ravens coming up. Both of those teams are going to want to really run the rock. And if you can't stop it, they're going to run it. And they won't be the only ones. If you can't stop the run, then they're definitely going to continue to run the ball. And then, kind of responding to my own question from a day ago here on the podcast when I said, can this defense live up to the hype? Then no, right? I mean, when the expectations for this defense are very high. I've been talking about top 5, top 3. Well, that's only just hype if they can't stop the run. So they've got to find a way to clean that up. Obviously, it's not something that we're going to worry about tonight. A lot of the guys that we're going to see tonight are going to end up being guys aren't even on the roster, right? There's going to be guys that are playing football tonight, and they're going to be pumping gas on Monday, right? And I'm not trying to be funny, but that's just the reality of it. I mean, the NFL stands for not for long. So they're going to have an opportunity to put their best film out there, really go to work, and they're not only auditioning for the Raiders, but 31 other teams across the National Football League. But, Tyree, he needs to show his worth. I mean, it seems like he's the guy that everyone's talking about right now, and it's not talking about in a positive way, right? I mean, if he doesn't show up and show out pretty soon, he's going to be in that conversation with guys like Cleve Farrell, John Abram, Alex Leatherwood, Carl Joseph, Garyon Conley, right? Former first-round picks that just didn't make it. You get it, right? Henry Ruggs didn't make it, but that was another reason. But, for the most part, most of the first-round picks that the Raiders have had in the last handful of years have not worked out. Josh Jacobs was a good first-round pick, and now he's gone. So we'll see. But I understand where you're feeling and how you're feeling about the hype right now because, well, for so many years, there's a lot of hype around the Raiders, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of letdown. So we'll see exactly what happens, and it all gets started on September 8th. That's what we do know for sure. But that's all we got time for on today's show. I got a call or a text from PK Raider out in Oakland, Cali, a call from Jacob in Hanford. We'll get to that coming up on Monday. Just Win Will at the 816. Again, we'll address your text coming up next week as well. And, we'll recap the game a little bit. If anyone stood out, especially any of the guys that I talked about in segment number 2, we'll talk about that. And if not, then we'll focus 100% on cutdowns and how that 53-man roster all comes together. But we'll do that coming up next week. So enjoy the game tonight, the final preseason game against the 49ers. Alumni Day. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, I'm doing the pregame show and the postgame show, I should say, from Allegiant Stadium, the Torch. So if you're, around Allegiant, if you're going to be in town, come to the Torch, say what's up. I'd love to meet you and, chop it up, talk a little Raider football with you. That'll be from 5 to about 6:30. Then the postgame show will probably come from the radio booth up in the press box. So I won't be able to meet Raider Nation then. But if you are in and around town at Allegiant Stadium, definitely come by the Torch and say what's up for the pregame show starting at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So until Monday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Have a great weekend. And, of course, as always, just win, baby.